Hello and welcome to Real Cryptids, a program where we'll talk about some spooky tales, some folklore, and some scary monsters that may or may not be real. So to get started, we have to ask a pretty important question. What is a cryptid? So Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines a cryptid as an animal, such as a Sasquatch or the Loch Ness Monster, we all know those, that has been claimed to exist but has never been proven to exist. But contrary to popular belief, cryptids don't have to be supernatural, mythical, or even all that strange, though many of the popular creatures acquire these characteristics over time as their legends grow. So let's get started with probably one of the most popular cryptids in our area. This wacky looking thing is called the Snallygaster. So the Snallygaster is mostly popular in Frederick County, though it does have a few tales here in Washington County as well. It's supposed to live deep in the caves of South Mountain, and it originally was called the Schnellergeist, which means the quick spirit in German. So it supposedly has a shriek like a locomotive engine or whistle. And at one point, U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt was reportedly said to be considered to postpone an international trip to come to our area and actually hunt the beast. So as you can tell from this picture and our previous picture, it's kind of a mix between a snake and a bird. And in this photo, it's got one giant eye in the middle of its face. Sometimes it's got tentacles coming out of its mouth. It's pretty wild. So I wanted to start by reading this newspaper article that was actually published here in Washington County in our very own Morning Herald. This was published December 2nd, 1932. The Bivalvus snallygaster, mammoth and mysterious, bird which has alarmed residents of Washington and Frederick counties during the past few weeks is no more. Such is the well-founded opinion of Harry Wachtel of Myersville, who clipped one of its wings with a bullet, which resulted in the capture by 10-year-old Kyle Biddle, who says it's worth keeping whether or not it's the real Snallygaster or not. The big flying creature, which has created more excitement in this section than the general election in November, was taken alive about a mile from Myersville on Wednesday, and many residents of both Washington and Frederick counties have viewed it. Now that a close-up can be observed of the monster bird, expert naturalists and birdists say the Snallygaster is an owl. Opinion seems to differ as to just what kind of owl. Some say it's a Canadian owl, some say it's just a booby owl, but all agree that with its weird gray wings, it could be taken for a Snallygaster, Jabberwock, Wampoodle, or most any other species with a horrifying name. But what of the Go Devil, which appeared in these parts 25 years ago? If there was a Snallygaster and Go Devil, both all well and good. But if the two birds are the same one, then the Frederick County press is all wet. The Frederick Post carried the article of the bird being found alive, but read what the Middletown Register said in its read what the Middletown Register said in its Thursday issue. According to information received by the Register Thursday morning, the Snallygaster was attracted to the Frog Hollow section of Washington County, not far over the South Mountain, from Middletown Valley, by fumes arising from a 2,500-gallon moonshine liquor vat, and this proved its undoing. For just as the monster flew over the large receptacle, it was overcome and fell directly in the mash. It is further said there were 5 attendants at the illicit liquor plant at the time the monster arrived, but that none of them waited long enough to witness the fatal ending of the beast. It was perhaps well for the moonshiners that the monster appeared on the scene when it did, or they may have been enjoying a sojourn in the Washington County Jail today. George T. Danforth, in charge of the Hagerstown Prohibition Office, accompanied by Agent Charles E. Cushwa, who had received information concerning the Big Moonshine plant, arrived in Frog Hollow early Thursday morning, and much to their surprise, they found the plant entirely abandoned. But imagine our feelings, said Danforth to a register representative, when our eyes feasted on the monster, submerged in the liquor vat. With a feeling of trepidation, the 2 men cautiously made their way to the vat, and according to their own statement, were greatly relieved to find the monster cold in death. A hasty examination by the 2 agents revealed that the mash had eaten practically all the flesh from the monster, only the skeleton of the beast remaining. This, it was explained, was caused by a large amount of lye, which had been placed in the mash in order to hurry up the liquor-making process. Without further ado, according to Mr. Danforth and Mr. Cushwa, 500 pounds of dynamite were secured and placed under the vat, with the result that the remains of the great monster were blown into tiny bits, thus ending the career of the Go Devil for all time to come. The action of the 2 Prohibition agents will certainly be welcome news to persons residing in the various sections where the beast was seen, for they can now lay down their arms and once again enjoy a quiet night's rest. So, that was the death of the Snallygaster, apparently so overcome by moonshine fumes that he crashed into a barrel and was then blown to smithereens by 500 pounds of dynamite. I wish that journalism was this interesting nowadays. I suppose it is, but what a read, right? So moving on to another local cryptid. This one is actually related to the Snallygaster. We have an upright wolf, and his name is the Dwayyo. So the Dwayyo is actually supposedly the mortal enemy of the Snallygaster. Dwayyo sightings have been in 1944, 1965, 66, 67, and then all the way up to 1978. So I've got another newspaper article here. There were actually quite a few, so I had to pick and choose these. So this one in particular, these were all published in the Frederick News Post by a man called George May, and he was the one that published all of these articles. So every Dwayyo article I read is going to be by George May. Dwayyo could be a modern Snallygaster. It had to happen sooner or later. With all the talk about the mysterious Dwayyo going around, someone just had to tie in the monster with the legendary Snallygaster. The Snallygaster and the Dwayyo could be connected by birth. A Burkittsville resident says the Snallygaster lays eggs, which hatch every 20 years. The eggs should be hatching just about now, he said, and the Dwayyo could be actually a Snallygaster. For those persons too young to remember the Snallygaster is said to have originated in the Middletown Valley area in the early 1920s. A Snallygaster, according to Webster's Third New International Dictionary, is a mythical nocturnal creature, half bird and half reptile, chiefly reported in the rural Maryland area, which preys on children and poultry. The exact origin of the snallygaster remains unknown, but some reports indicate the creature came into being to scare moonshiners around the Middletown area. George C. Roderick Jr., publisher of the Valley Register, Middletown's weekly newspaper, said his father published reports about the creature after word of the snallygaster began spreading in the Middletown Valley. Most every paper in the county carried reports of snallygaster sightings, and each article played up the creature a little more than the previous article. The snallygaster sightings died down in the late 1920s, but was revived again in the 1930s by the Middletown paper, more or less as a reminder. This set people to thinking again, and of course, more snallygasters were seen, not only in the Middletown area, but all over Frederick County. The Middletown paper finally stopped the snallygaster talk when it published a story saying the winged creature had drowned in a moonshiner's mash barrel in the mountains. When the snallygaster was enjoying the most publicity, there were innumerable sightings reported, not only by residents in the area, but by travelers crossing Braddock and South Mountain. It was so bad at one time, Roderick says, that children were never seen in the streets when it began to get dark, and many adults themselves refused to leave their homes at night. So, old snallygaster, move over. A challenger has arisen to attempt a takeover as the most mysterious creature ever to roam Frederick County. The challenger, of course, the tall, black, mysterious Dwayyo, which is being seen and heard throughout the county. The Dwayyo could become the area's most famous monster. And then I have another one, and this one, because we always have to wrap them up really nice in this area. They can't be like Bigfoot where we're still looking for them. Dog tag issued. Dwayyo hunt flops. The mysterious Dwayyo is apparently still on the loose in Frederick County. A Dwayyo hunt scheduled last night was a complete flop. No one knows why the hunt didn't materialize, but some have said that fear itself kept the mighty hunters at Frederick Community College from the hunt. The hunt came to light earlier this week when between 50 and 100 students at the college signed up to participate in the Dwayyo hunt. Scheduled for 5 p.m. Wednesday, several people went to Frederick High School where the hunt was supposed to begin, but nothing happened. A student at the college said too many students had classes at the time. A Frederick man said that around 9 p.m., however, a pickup truck full of boys, some with helmets and waving machetes, was seen on West 7th Street. The man said he didn't know if they were out hunting Dwayyos, but that they were shouting and making a good bit of noise. Meanwhile, it appears that the Dwayyo can roam the countryside at will because a dog license tag has been issued for the animal, beast, or whatever it is. Today, a dog license was received at the news post addressed to John Becker in care of George May. The $1 license was made out in the name of John Becker, Dwayyo originator, of Fern Rock Road. Under breed of dog was a question mark and the name Dwayyo. The tag was forwarded by the county treasurer's office. The treasurer's office, which issues dog licenses, received a letter Wednesday afternoon with a typewritten application for a Dwayyo license. The name given was that of John Becker of the Fern Rock Road. The application was accompanied by a $1 bill, the cost of a dog tag. The application was approved by the county treasurer. Now, if only someone could catch the elusive Dwayyo. So as it mentioned in there, the originator of the Dwayyo myth or cryptid was a man supposedly called John Becker, who lived on a road supposedly called Fern Rock Road. When the police of the time looked into that, they could neither find a John Becker or a Fern Rock Road in Frederick County. So this story is about as wishy-washy as the whole Dwayyo thing. Make of that what you will, but we always love a good mystery, don't we? So moving on, we're gonna stay in that creepy black dog feel a little bit with our next one. This one's just as close to home. This is the Snarly Yow. So the Snarly Yow, he inhabits South Mountain. If you actually go up to the pinnacle of South Mountain, you will find a plaque that actually talks about him. It says, "Beware the Snarly Yow. Legend has it that the shadow of a black dog used to prowl the heights of South Mountain. One night, a huntsman, famous as a sure shot, encountered the beast. He aimed and fired his rifle. The shot went right through the animal with no effect. He fired again and again, each shot passing through the shadowy beast. Finally, overcome with dread, the huntsman fled." And that's usually the kind of story we get almost every time with the Snarly Yow. He's kind of a ghost dog. He's this big black apparition dog. He's got glowing red eyes, sometimes like a glowing red mouth too. For this one, I'm going to tell us the story from a book called South Mountain Magic. This book was actually published in the 1800s, 1882, by a woman called Madeline Vinton Dahlgren. She went around looking into all of the South Mountain folklore and stories. So let's see here, we've got stories of the occult, superstitions, apparitions, haunts, witchcraft, everything on South Mountain. She got first-person testimony. It's all in this book. I definitely recommend checking it out. We do have it here at the library. So I'm going to read just a quick story here, one of the first-person accounts of the Snarly Yow. Our first narrator and a credible witness is William. He is a good type of a sturdy mountain man, a sober, laborious, strong, and trustworthy young man of perhaps 30 years of age. He is married and lives with his little family in the first cabin on the brow of the hill that overlooks Glendale. His hut is not over a quarter of a mile from the alleged habitat of the black dog. One night, about 10 o'clock, as he was returning from the village of Boonesboro, whither he had gone to make some little purchases for his family, he encountered the black dog. It was clear starlight, and the ungainly form of the beast could have been distinctly traced. It was black and bigger than any dog he had ever seen. And as he came nearer, the object intercepted him and stood guarding the road in such a way as to forbid his crossing. So, to use his own expression, he fit. That is, nothing daunted, he fought at him. But to his confusion, as the creature was attacked, it grew longer, and presently seemed to extend across the road, making no noise, but showing a very wide and very ugly-looking red mouth, while all the time the thick and heavy blows rained down upon it. The sinewy arm of the woodsman met with no resistance, but rather seemed to beat the air. Presently, the still lengthening shadow passed onward, and then the man, not a little flurried at the strange nature of the vision, went home. Nor did he receive the least bodily harm from the ominous combat. But we have several times heard him tell this story when questioned about it, and when one looks upon the erect and well-knit figure of his stalwart tiller of the soil, and his firm and composed bearing, one cannot help but wonder how such a man could have a spectral illusion. There's a bunch more stories about the Snarly Yow in there, so if you want to read more about this specter dog, I definitely recommend checking this book out. So our next cryptid, we're going to go a little north. This is a Pennsylvania cryptid. Is this ugly looking thing, and the fact that it's ugly is actually part of its tail. This is a squonk. So a squonk, they mostly are in northern Pennsylvania, but have been reported in Franklin County, Pennsylvania as well. The squonk's skin is supposedly ill-fitting and covered in warts. It spends most of its time crying and weeping because it knows how ugly it is, which is really sad. If you try to catch it or corner it, it will literally turn into a puddle of tears and bubbles. It'll just disappear. It'll cry itself away. So I don't have a story for this one because Phil Collins and Genesis were kind enough in the 70s to write us a song instead. So I'm actually going to play us this song all about the squonk. saw some of the illusions that we were talking about in there. All the king's horses, all the king's men couldn't put a smile on that face. The hunter put him in a bag. As he put him over his shoulder, he heard sobbing until he didn't, and then there was just nothing but a sack of tears and bubbles. So I like when cryptids kind of get into the mainstream like that. It's always interesting and fun. So we've got one cryptid left, and this one's pretty famous. It's actually gotten into the mainstream a little bit. There we go. And that's the Goat Man. All right, so the Goat Man is native to Bowie, Maryland. Supposedly, the origin story for the Goat Man is that a genetic scientist at the Beltsville Animal Research Center, or the BARC, as some call it for short, was injecting human genes into goat DNA. There was an accident, and more or less this scientist turned himself into the axe-wielding Goat Man, which is what we all know him as. He's a murderer. He kills people with an axe. He particularly does not like lovers, young couples, and dogs. The story I have for you for this one is coming from Monsters of Maryland. This book was compiled by Ed Conowitz. So I'm going to read you just a really short passage from this one. Okay. One of the most repeated Goatman tales is almost identical to a very well-known urban legend about a teenage couple parked in a secluded area. Responding to a sound, the boy leaves the car to investigate. He tells his date to remain inside, no matter what happens, until he returns. After hours pass, the girl decides her boyfriend is not coming back. She hears tapping on the roof of the car. Terrified, she remains inside, afraid to leave or investigate the never-ending sound on the roof. At daylight, she exits her vehicle and discovers her dead boyfriend hanging from a tree, dangling directly atop the car. His feet were the cause of the tapping, possibly trying to get her attention and help. He was killed by the Goat Man, or Hook Man, or Hermit Man, depending on the locale or teller of the tale. So that's usually how this one goes. It's usually people on like a lover's lane. One gets out, gets killed, the other one finds them. Sometimes both of them get killed. One of the last stories that came out about the Goat Man was actually, unfortunately, a dog that had gotten decapitated, and they blamed it on the Goat Man. So he's pretty common. He's pretty common in these parts, or at least down in Prince George's County. But he's become very popular, especially after the Washington Post picked up stories about them. I believe he's got some stories down in Louisiana and Texas as well, so lots of people know about the Goat Man. So that's all I have for cryptids for you today. If you have any questions, you feel free to give us a call or an email, and we would love to answer them for you. I hope this was spooky. I hope you enjoyed it, and a happy Halloween to you all. Bye.